Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, SPC205, whatever time you're consuming this little piece of educational media. I am again Vic McInnes, your public speaking instructor, coming to you live from my COVID-19 compound here in the heart of the Grovetown, Georgia metropolitan area, the lovely Aiken Tech Outpost here in Columbia County. Today, our lecture is brought to you by your lawn. Hey, we've all been cooped up inside for too long. Go out and sit in your lawn. If you don't have a lawn, go sit in somebody else's, but please ask permission first. Okay, today we're going to be hitting a couple of things. I got a ring light now so that I can be better lit, and I got to keep remembering not to tilt my head up too far. So first thing we're going to be talking about is choosing your topic, how you choose a topic for a speech, what you want to talk about. Then after that, we're going to be talking about your next speech. Now, you've got a speech that's due to be posted on tomorrow by noon. That's your 2-minute speech. Your first graded speech is going to be due the Tuesday after that. It's going to be a ceremonial speech, and we're going to talk about that before we get to the end of the class today. Okay? But first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about choosing your topic, what you're going to be talking about. This seems like sort of obvious to say that you should spend some time choosing your topic. But a lot of people just grab something and then they just go, and they wound up giving really bad speeches, not because they're bad speakers, not because things, for a whole lot of reasons that people normally give speeches, they just pick a topic they don't really like. But it was easy to do. So today we're going to walk through the steps of how you pick a topic, why picking a topic is so important. Okay? So let's go to the slides, which is apparently going to be easier said than done. There we go. All right, into the slides. Let's go back to the beginning. Yes, indeed. You know I'm a professional because I do everything so smoothly. All right. So let's talk first of all about choosing your topic. The sound you're about to hear is me opening my sugar-free Sprite. Okay, choosing your topic. So why do we care? Why are we going to focus on this? Why are we spending most of the lecture today on choosing your topic? Well, first of all, choosing your topic is the first chance you have to take control of the speaking event. In all likelihood, you're not going to be picking where you do it. You're not going to be picking when you do it. You're not going to be picking who the audience is. We'll take all of that into consideration. But the first time you have real control over what you're talking about in the speaking event is going to be when you pick your topic. Now, the people who ask you to give a speech are rarely, if ever, going to tell you, come and talk about whatever you want to for however long you want to. In my 35 years, well, actually, going all the way back to when I was in high school, when I was asked to do public speeches back then, I was never just told, hey, listen, come talk about whatever you want to. That has never happened. You'll be given a time, a place, and the audience will usually be picked for you, okay? Picking your topic is going to be the first time you really can take control of the event. It begins the process of establishing your credibility within that speaking event. You picking a topic is going to let the audience know right off the bat who you are and what you're going to be talking about. And when you announce your topic with your statement of purpose in your speech, it's going to establish who you are and will start to build your credibility among that audience. And it will also set the tone for the speech and how it's going to be delivered. Okay, and we'll talk about the 3 general purposes of a speech, but your topic is really going to lend itself or to one of those topics, and it's going to allow you to, drive home and sort of set the boundaries for where you can go with that speech. Okay? Now, there are 3 things that need to be considered when selecting a topic. 3 things that need to be considered when selecting a topic. The first one is the speaker, and that is you. Okay? What you need to think about is, what are you interested in? Okay? People, when I talk to speakers and they ask me, hey, listen, how did you think I did on that speech? And I have in the past looked at them and said, hey, listen, you really just seemed like you were walking through it. You were almost asleep. You didn't seem to be engaged with the topic at all. And they said, well, I didn't like the topic very much. Now, well, why did you pick it? And they said, well, I thought it would make me look smart. I know my boss wanted me to talk about that. And you had the free range of anything within these parameters to talk about, and you picked something you just weren't interested in. What do you think would be the end result of that? You're going to give a boy, unless you're a really, really practiced speaker, the end result of that is going to be a boring speech. So pick a topic that you're interested in. Ask yourself, what experiences have you had? Okay? Now, experiences can fall into two different categories. First of all is an actual experience. That's something you've done. A personal experience, a visceral experience that you were there for. Whitewater rafting on the Colorado River. The entrance processes, the admission processes at Aiken Technical College. Driving down between Aiken and Augusta, things to be worried about. You know, what to do when you go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. These are things you could have actually experienced and in first person. But there is also what we call a vicarious experience, an experience that you did not obtain directly. And there's a million different ways to gain a vicarious experience. You can read a book. You can watch a TV show. You can watch a documentary. You can talk to somebody. You can read somebody's blog. Any way you gain or view someone else's experience, but then you gain them. Okay? So the advantages to using your own experiences, they allow you to speak in your own words. You don't have to worry about quoting anybody. You really don't have to worry about memorization because you were already there. Now, the big question comes up and says, hey, listen, which is more valuable, actual or vicarious? And the answer to this is the same thing as the answer is to almost every question in public speaking. It depends. While initially we would all like to say actual experiences are better, okay, they're not always possible. Like if you wanted to talk about fighting in the trenches of World War I, no one is going to be able to give you an actual experience of that because all our World War I veterans are now gone. They're all past. They're all deceased. What was it like to work for women's suffrage back in the early 20th century? We don't have anybody who actually experienced that because they're all gone. Any historic topic that goes, to be honest with you, back past the Great Depression and World War II, everybody that experienced them is gone. Okay, if you go back more than, what was it like to live through the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918? I remember talking to my grandmother about that. My grandmother has been gone now for over 35 years. There are a couple of people that were infants during the Spanish flu epidemic. So if we're going to talk about the Spanish flu outbreak in the 1918 and 1919, we're going to have to use a vicarious experience. Vicarious experiences are very valuable. So don't shy away from them. Okay, so what are you interested in? What experiences have you had? What specialized knowledge do you have? Okay, your credentials will impact on your credibility. And if you get up there and you want to talk about hygiene, and if you want to talk about preventing the spread of the novel coronavirus, then the fact that you're a nurse and you've trained in infectious diseases is going to make you more credible, and you will bring that up during your speech. Okay? If you say, I'm a nurse with 15 years experience, that's going to give you more credibility than if you say, I read an article about this last week. Now, in our classes and our speeches, I'm going to tell you how we're going to get over that because you may not have specialized knowledge. But we're at least going to acknowledge the fact that we do need to discuss our experiences. Always when you're talking about specialized knowledge is be able to identify how you know something and why you're an expert. And then finally, ask yourself, what does the audience know about me? Okay? Do they have a specific expectation of you? Go to your own strengths, okay? And don't be afraid to surprise them, all right? A lot of times, and when we talk about our ceremonial speeches and introducing someone, a lot of times the ceremonial speeches I enjoy the most is when someone is being introduced and they're being introduced for something that you really didn't know about them, okay? Professional football player who also happens to be a doctor, and they talk about their qualifications as a doctor. A scientist who also happens to be a semi-professional dancer. Something that really is shocking is going to have an impact, okay? So know their expectations, go to your strength, but also be prepared to surprise people. So the first thing you need to think of when you're picking a topic for your speech, There's three things. The first one is always, always, always you, the speaker. The second thing you're going to want to think about is the occasion. And we find out about the occasion by asking the person who's inviting you. You're going to want to ask them, what's the nature of the event? Why are people going to be there? Okay, if it's a celebratory event, hey, listen, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the founding of our nonprofit organization. That's a celebration. That's great. If they ask you to come because there's been a death and they think that you would be able to commemorate the person, that is a ceremonial speech that we'll talk about in a little bit. That's going to change it. Are the people there to have a party? Or they're there to honor a famous person? Why is everyone gathering there? Okay. Then ask, what will be the mood of the occasion? Okay. Just remember, if you're not in line with the mood of the occasion, okay, the audience, it will affect your credibility. Oh, let me back up. Click that answer. Well, there we go. Okay. Be prepared to shift on the fly. Okay. Let me knock this off. Let me go back to the video here real quick. Okay. All right. True story. I have a friend who does public speaking professionally. He goes and he's also an investment banker. So but he gets paid a good deal of money to fly around to different places. You know, you see these guys at conferences and things like that. One of his jobs is to fly to places to give, humorous, motivational speeches. And I've seen him speak a couple of times. He's a great speaker. He usually does about 25, 30 minutes, tells a lot of funny stories, and then wraps it all up together with a motivational message. Well, I was talking to him one time about horrible speech experiences, and a couple of us were sort of exchanging stories, and then he said, I got one that'll beat all of that. And I said, okay. He had been contracted to come speak at this civic organization. Never told me which one. And he sat there and he came in and he said, hey, had dinner. They ate dinner and everything was great. Then he got ready they had gotten to the portion where he was looking at the program where he was going to speak. And he had 30 minutes of good material. He said, I had a lot of big laughs. I had a lot of great things going on. And it was just there was a lot of people joking around. The bar had been open for a couple of hours. Everybody was having a great time. And then the president of the organization comes over to him and he goes, hey, are you ready to go on? And my friend goes, yeah, I'm ready whenever you are. He said, well, I've got one short announcement to make and then we'll call you up and I'll introduce you. Everybody's really excited. A lot of people have seen you before and they're really excited to hear you talk. My friend, well, thanks very much. I'm looking forward to talking. So the president gets up there and he taps does the spoon on the glass thing, and everybody begins to focuses on him, and he says, hey, we're all looking forward to having our guest speaker here tonight. Some of us have heard him. He's very funny, very entertaining. But I do have one quick announcement to make. All know Bill Smith, who helped found our organization 40 years ago. Well, we've had some horrible news. Bill passed away this afternoon from a massive heart attack. And my friend said, you literally heard the air rush out of the room. I mean, there was just this, and everybody was just like, and the guy says, our founder, Bill Smith, has passed away unexpectedly this afternoon. And now our guest speaker. And so my buddy is sitting there as he's walking up to the podium. He's like, going, nope, flipping through his cards going, nope. And I went, what the hell did you do? And because I'm in complete admiration that he wasn't lynched. And he sits there and he goes, I got up there in front of the microphone. I looked out at the people. And I thought for a minute, remember what I told you last time about pausing and being silent shows that you're in control and you're comfortable? He said, I looked out at the audience. I took a deep breath. I had no idea what I was going to say. So I took another deep breath. And then I just sort of leaned forward a little bit and said, I have to be honest, I never met Bill. I've heard a couple of you speak about him tonight. He seems like a great guy, and your reaction clearly indicates that he was very important to each and every one of you. I don't think we've processed yet exactly what's happened here today. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 10 minutes and allow everyone to process. I'm going to go back and I'm going to sit down. And we're just going to take a few minutes to process what Bill meant to all of us. And then in 10 minutes or so, I'll be back up here speaking. Please, I am sorry for your loss. He said he went over and sat down. I said, what did you do at that point? He said, I wrote a new speech. 10 minutes of loss and grieving, followed by 15 minutes of, uplifting stuff. Got a standing ovation. I went, okay. I have had instances where I walked in to give a speech where it was described to me as a very important, very serious occasion. And I started speaking at 7 o'clock, and I found out later, that night that the bar had opened at 4, and everybody in the place was hammered. So I had to change my speech on the fly. Nothing as serious as my buddy went through, but be aware that they will change very quickly and on the fly. Okay? Here's some other things you're going to want to think of. What are the time limits? That's something you're going to want to ask. What is the rest of the program going to consist of? Because if you come on right after the dog act, you're going to want to change your speech. What's the physical setting going to be? Is it going to be indoors or outdoors? Is the audience going to be seated or standing? How big is the room going to be? Will it hold 30 or will it hold 400? And then, will there be a public address system? And if there is a public address system, I'm going to advise you to get there early and try it out, because not everybody's voice works well with every public address system. Now, a lot of people have high-pitched voices, and it's hard for some public address systems to pick them up. My voice has a tendency to project directly into the microphone, and if I'm not very careful, the PA system can be turned up too loud, and I can just vibrate the hell out of the speaker. So a lot of times, I have to go in and ask them to turn it down, or in some cases, I've even had them shut the PA system off altogether and just let me talk. Okay? All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is the audience. I'm not going to go into detail in the audience because your next lecture is going to be about audience analysis, but they are the single biggest variable in the equation. You can't be changed. You are who you are, okay? The occasion will be set by somebody else. The big variable in this is going to be the audience. And who will be listening will be key to your planning, and we'll discuss that in our next lecture, okay? So remember the 3 things you consider when picking your your topic: the speaker, which is you, the occasion, and the audience. The next thing you want to do is going to want to pick the purpose of your speech, okay? There are 3 main purposes. The first is to inform. You will be giving an informative speech. An informative speech is just to pass information. Your end state is for them to be smarter on a topic, to give them data, to give them information for them to absorb. The second general purpose is to entertain. And that is just to give the audience a chance to relax and enjoy. Does it always have to be funny? No, it doesn't. It can be enthralling, exciting, but an entertaining speech doesn't need a lot of engagement from the audience. They're basically just to relax and enjoy. The last type of speech is to persuade. I'm not going to talk in great detail about persuasive speaking. You're going to get an entire lecture on that later on. But the main thing about persuasive speaking is you're there to change an attitude or a behavior. Okay? So the other way you need to think about this is, what's the end state of your speech? Okay? If you're there to give the audience new knowledge, then you want to do an informative speech. If you're there so the audience would be able to relax and enjoy a speech, you want to do an entertaining speech. But if you're there to create a new attitude or change an existing attitude or adopt a new behavior, then you're going to want to do a persuasive speech. All right? So remember, we have a subject that's generally going to be given to you by somebody else. You're going to determine your general purpose, which is to inform, to persuade, or entertain. And then it's time for you to pick your specific topic. So let's talk about the specific purpose or topic that you're going to find. Let's say you work for the Secretary of State of South Carolina. You help run the South Carolina electoral system. You're big on elections and voting. So your topic is going to be, subject is going to be voting. Okay? You've been given the subject of voting. And you've determined, because you're going to talk to a group of high schoolers, that your purpose for this speech is going to be inform high schoolers on voting. All right? So you see it sort of narrowing down and what you can talk about. So here are some of the specific purposes or topics you may pick. You may want to tell a high schooler how to get an absentee ballot. You may want to talk to them about how to register to vote. You may want to talk to them about voting eligibility requirements and when they're legally eligible to go in and register to vote. Okay? So, same thing. Subject is voting, but in this case, you want to be entertaining. All right? So, some of the things you may talk about is wacky candidates from around the world, like the official Monster Raving Loony Party in the United Kingdom, whose big plank this year, the big thing in the last elections was if Europe is going to leave the European Union, why don't we hook up a bunch of tugboats and drag Britain to Canada and join Canada? They're a legitimate party. They're kind of funny. There was that guy in 2016 who insisted on showing up at all sorts of campaign events. He was on the ballot in many states to run for president, and he wore a Wellington boot on his head. Wore a boot on his head, and his only promise was that if I get elected president, everybody gets a pony, which is not that bad an idea. Okay? Or you could go into crazy voting laws, like how to solve a tie. You know, in New Hampshire, if there's a tie in the election, they flip a coin, and whoever gets to call it, if they call it right, they're elected. If they don't, they lose, and the other guy's elected. In Nevada, and this would only happen in the state that has Las Vegas, you literally, if it's a tie, cut a deck of cards. If the governor, if two people are running for governor in Nevada, and they tie, the Secretary of State will bring in a sealed deck of cards. He will open it, he will shuffle it 3 times, and then the candidates will pick a card. And the one who picks the highest card wins the election. Okay? So that could be made entertaining. And again, a very serious topic of voting, a very big topic like voting, can be turned into something entertaining. Then finally, let's talk about, again, the subject is voting. Your job is to persuade. So you're going to be, vote for my guy. Hey, I've got the best candidate. You need to vote for my guy. If you're being nonpartisan, hey, listen, this is why you need to vote. Or you could be there advocating for some changes that we need in our voting laws. Okay? All of those would require an adoption of a new behavior or a change or a new attitude to be adopted. Okay? So that's persuasive for voting. Try to get people to do something. Okay? Okay, so real quick, let me pop off this. Go back to this so you can see me. Okay. Again, so let me sort of sum up before we start talking about your ceremonial speeches. Okay? Selecting a topic is incredibly important because it's going to be the first chance you have to really sort of take control of the event. Okay? As the speaker, everybody's going to be looking at you, but really so much of what's going to happen is going to be out of your control. Again, you may not be able to pick the time, the place, the venue, whether or not there's a PA, whether or not the participants will be drunk. And I have given speeches to drunk people before. Large groups of drunk people. They usually go really well because drunk people like me, I guess. I don't know. But you do get to control the topic. Now, there have been times in the past where people have called me up and said, hey, listen, we would like for you to come give a speech. And I said, okay, great. What do you want me to talk about? And they will give me a topic, and I go, well, hold on a minute, I got to think about that one. Let me call you back. And I'll call them back, and I say, hey, listen, I'm not really comfortable talking about that, but I would like to talk about this, which is fairly similar. And they have gone, we're not comfortable with you talking about that. We would like for you to stick to this. And I've gone, okay, fine. I appreciate the invitation, but I can't accept just because I don't feel comfortable talking on that subject. Not because the subject offends me, but because I'm just not an expert on that. So it would be very difficult for me to give a credible speech. Okay? Yeah, you never want to walk into an environment where there are a lot of people in the audience that know more about a subject than you do. And that was usually the case where I've had to beg off. Professionally, a lot of times, I would be asked to come in and speak at a conference when I knew half the audience were people that I had worked for before. And if I walked into that environment and started spouting stuff off, it would have been ugly. Okay, well, people would have been nice to me, but it wouldn't have been a very effective speech. Okay, so selecting the topic, first time you get to start taking control of the speaking event. All right. Okay, so let's go back to the slides here real quick so we can talk about your ceremonial speeches. Now, your ceremonial speeches, well, let's just talk about ceremonial speeches. They're generally accepted 4 types of ceremonial speeches, and a ceremonial speech is what you give at a ceremony. It sounds obvious, and there are very different types of ceremonial speeches. The first type is an introduction, and that's what you're going to be doing. You'll be introducing the speaker at a formal occasion. Okay? There are awards presentations or an awards acceptance. And these speeches are very structured. An award presentation, usually whoever is presenting the award, the organization, will have specific criteria for you to go through outlining why the person was given this award. Think about the Oscars or the American Film Institute when they give a Lifetime Achievement Award. They will get up there, somebody will get up there and read a very specific script outlining exactly what the criteria for the award is. Now, an acceptance speech is a ceremonial speech. It is very formatted, and the expectations are fairly rigid, but you're given a lot more leeway in how you present it. The next type is what's called a funereal speech. We usually think of these as eulogies. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be watching a eulogy. Billy Crystal eulogizing Muhammad Ali. This is a speech where someone has passed away, and it is your job to get up there and give and speak about their lives. Again, funereal speeches have they're not rigidly formatted, but there are very well-entrenched expectations of what people will say. And then there's the celebratory speech where you're there for the opening of the new hospital wing. You're addressing a graduation. You're the commencement speaker at a graduation. You're there to celebrate events and people. And again, there may not be formal restrictions on what you say. In some cases, there will be. Like if you're the valedictorian, it is now fairly routine for the school administration for you to demand you submit your speech and for them to review it, because everybody's got a video camera stuck in their back pocket, and if you say something stupid, it's going to be on the internet all over the place tomorrow. So there are those formal requirements, but also people don't want you to get up at a celebratory event and start talking about how horrible the economy is in COVID-19. That's just not what it's there for. So how do ceremonial speeches differ from the other speeches we'll be given in the class? Well, first of all, they have a tendency to be more formal. And by formal, what I mean is there's an expectation that you will be standing behind a podium, that you will be dressed and again, not in a black tie or a tuxedo or an evening gown, but your dress will be in accordance with what everyone else is wearing. People will expect you to do specific things, and we're going to talk about one of the first things you're going to do in your speech, even though there will be nobody there. If you're brought up, the first thing you're going to do is thank the person who brought you to the podium, okay? There are those expectations, and there is structure to it, but it's not formally organized like speeches are that we're going to be talking about. You know, in speeches that we're going to be talking about, we're going to have some very specific organization. For ceremonial speeches, they're usually much shorter, so you get a lot more fluidity and they're less rigidly organized. You're going to hear more ornamental language in most cases. At a graduation speech, you don't hear somebody say, "Hey, you knocked it out in 4 years, good on you." You know, you're going to hear somebody say, "We are proud today to gather to celebrate the achievement of your 4 years of arduous study in order to accomplish this degree or diploma." Okay? Ceremonial speeches are going to be much more dependent on the context because people are gathered there for a very specific reason: a graduation, a funeral, an awards dinner, things like that. And then finally, in most of the speeches we'll be doing, the focus is very much on you as the speaker, and the judgment on your speech is on you as a speaker. But for a ceremonial speech, okay, the focus is on how you introduce or how you acknowledge the subject of the speech, either the graduates, the dead guy, the person getting the award, the person giving the speech, whatever. Okay, so let's talk about exactly what you're going to be doing. So for your introductory speech, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to thank the person who introduces you. I don't care who that is, but you will call them by name. "Thanks, Bob. I appreciate your introduction." Okay, I had one student one time who I remember very clearly got up and asked if the person's child was still in rehab. "Thanks, Bob. By the way, is your son still in rehab? I hope he's doing well. That was a little awkward, even in the make-believe world in our class, but it really got everybody's attention. He got a pretty good grade off that speech. So the first thing you're going to do is acknowledge the person who introduced you and brought you to the stage. Does it serve any real organic purpose? No, it does not, except for the fact that people are going to expect you to do it. If Bob brings you up there and says, hey, we have a great speaker I'd like to bring to the stage, Victor McInnes, he's going to be introducing our keynote speaker today. You all know Victor, he's a member of the organization, so Victor, come on up. If I don't say thank you to the guy who brought me up there, people are going to think it's a little weird and we're pissed off at each other. So the first thing we do, like I said, more structured but less organized. So the first thing you're going to do is thank the person who introduced you. Then you're going to formally announce the person being introduced. Today, it is my great honor to introduce to you noted astrophysicist Carl Sagan. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the governor of the state of South Carolina. I don't know what his name, Wayne McMaster, whatever his name is, okay? Today, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the winner of the 1978 Academy Award for Best Actor, Bruce Dern, okay? Those two things are fixed in position, okay? Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you bringing me up here. Today, I would like to introduce you to the 1985 winner of the Heisman Trophy, Bo Jackson, okay? So you're going to formally announce the person being introduced. Now, the next three things can go in any order, but they all have to be there. One of the things you're going to have to give is the speaker's qualification to speak on the topic. The qualifications must be related to the topic. So we can talk about Mark Zuckerberg. He was the founder of the concept of social media. He invented Facebook. He was the youngest, at that time, was the youngest billionaire in human history. And he's here to talk to you today about ornithology and bird watching. You haven't told us anything about why he's a good ornithologist or a qualified bird watcher. The fact that he owns Facebook doesn't tell me anything about that. Okay? So you need to focus your qualifications on what they're talking about. Now, let me be specific on this. You will not read their Wikipedia citation. Okay? That happens every time. I can find out if that's what you've done. Okay? Because I will have your speeches on tape. Usually I have I'm not going to require you to turn in your manuscripts, but usually I have those. I can find out what you've got. So do not read their Wikipedia citation. You need to pick out a few key events from what it is specifically that they're going to be telling you. Okay? Then you're going to introduce the topic of the speech. Again, you can say that right as soon as you, hey, listen, today I'm here to introduce you to Tom Brokaw, former anchor of NBC Nightly News, and he's going to be talking to us about the news cycle. Mr. Brokaw can speak on this because, and then, and again, these can shift through any direction, okay? So you're going to introduce the topic of the speech, what the speakers want to talk about. I've introduced people before. I've had their qualifications because I looked them up online, and then I go over and I say, hey, listen, what are you talking about today? They give me the topic, and I go through and I mark out the things that I have noted for them that have nothing to do with the topic of the speech, to focus their qualifications. Then finally, and again, this is something you have to do, you tell the audience why they want to listen. Okay? And that's obvious. But here's the problem. Two things that people miss in a lot of these speeches is they'll go through the speaker's qualifications and think that that is enough of an introduction to the topic of the speech that they really don't have to mention it. Well, isn't it obvious what they're talking about? No, it's not. Okay? It's not. So you have to explicitly tell people what they're going to be talking about. And if you sit there in that one that happens all the time, and it's happened more times than a really surprising number of times, people get a good person. Hey, listen, I'm going to introduce to you somebody. They've actually cited people that work in our Student Success Center, and they're responsible for coaching people in their study habits. But they never tell us why we should listen to them. Okay? Just simply as simple as, hey, we're all college students. And our speaker today is going to talk to you about improving your study habits, which is clearly of importance to every single one of us in this room. Now, let me tell you why this speaker is qualified to speak on this topic. Okay? 3 simple things that have to be explicitly given. Okay? If you look at if you're going to use a script, if you look at your notes, okay, and you can't answer why we need to listen to the speech, and if you can't give me explicitly if you can't finish this sentence, today the speaker will be talking about, if you can't finish that sentence, and if it's not written down in your notes or in your manuscript, then you need to rethink your manuscript. Okay? And then finally, you need to bring the speaker to the stage. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Bob, our keynote speaker, Mr. Bob Smith. Okay? These are the formal steps that you have to accomplish in an introductory speech. So let's talk about your speech specifically. You will introduce a real person, living or dead. Don't care, but it's not a fictional character. It has to be somebody I can go back and look up myself. The person cannot be introduced either as a political or a religious leader. All right? If your pastor is your best friend in the world and he has helped you in your faith walk and he's done great things for you, that's wonderful. I'm happy for you. But you cannot introduce him or her for those reasons. Now, if your pastor also happens to be a doctor who has been in general practice for 30 years, and he or she is going to come up and talk about healthy eating, completely different subject. Okay? I've had many people that have introduced their parents or a friend who happens to be a pastor, but have introduced them for things that have nothing to do with their religious duties, and that's all completely fine. Your speech will be between 2 minutes and 45 seconds and 3 minutes and 15 seconds long. And we'll talk about the impact of that in just a second. But those are very specific times. 2 minutes and 45 seconds is not long enough. 3 minutes and 16 seconds is too long. Because I am allowing this to be read as a manuscript, you may use 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper for this speech to write out your speech. I'm very flexible because a lot of times ceremonial speeches will be written out, and we'll talk about methods of delivery before the week is over. And this is very important for an introductory speech because it allows you to get all the details right, okay? That way you're not floundering around and you miss something. Your speech can be done as a manuscript reading. No outline is needed. Post the link to your speech and the name of the person you will be introducing. I did leave one thing off the slide, and I'll make sure it goes out, and I'll be sending out an announcement later on today detailing this. You will need to send me the name of the person you're going to introduce by this Friday. That way, probably I'll make it Sunday at 5 o'clock. That way I can make sure you're not going to, you'll have to give me, one sentence on who this person is. That way I can make sure I don't have something happen like I did a couple of years ago where somebody was trying to be funny and they said, I'm going to introduce, Jeff Smith, the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, and I just, no, you're not. And he was going to do that speech as a joke, thought it would be funny. Clearly bad idea. So I'll post that when the formal announcement goes out on Blackboard this afternoon. Okay? Here's the rubric. This is what I am literally going to be using to grade you. Okay? Physical delivery. Remember, this should all add up to 40 points. That is correct. It's a 40-point speech, I believe. And if not, I just made this rubric up today. I will change the points around before Tuesday, in the next day or two, after I confirm all the points and everything. This is my rubric from last semester. I just retyped it. I will check it and make sure those point totals are correct. But anyway, you're going to be graded on physical delivery. Remember, feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, back straight, shoulders up, head up, looking at the camera, arms to your side. Now, if you are going to use 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper and you grip those pieces of paper with 2 hands, you are going to lose points there. Okay? If you shift your weight on your feet back and forth, you're going to lose points there. Now, these next 3 things are those 3 things I told you have to do. You have to introduce the topic of the speech. You have to give us the speaker's qualifications in relation to the topic of the speech. And then you have to give us, I said topic of speech, that's why I should proofread these things better. The next thing is going to be, hold on a second, let me back up. The next thing is going to be the audience while we care. Okay, so that third one is going to be relation to the audience instead of topic of the speech. I will post this very soon and you'll see it. Okay, and again, time is 2:45 to 3:15. 2:44 and you will lose 15 points. 3:16 and you will lose 15 points. And I'm not kidding about that. Two reasons why I do that. Number one, you're going to be given very specific time limits when you do this out in the real world. And the quickest indicator to me of how much time you spend practicing is how accurate you are in hitting the time when giving a speech. Okay? So this is clearly going to go through some changes over the next day or two. I will post it in the document section. I will post all the grading rubrics before we actually give the speeches so you know exactly what we're looking at. Okay? Links to your ceremonial speeches must be posted by 8 a.m. on 9 June. All right? Okay. Back to video. Okay. So that's what we've got for today. There will be another 2 lectures this week. I'm going to try to keep them both fairly short and not drone on for an hour. I'm trying to keep these video lectures a lot shorter so you're not just staring at me, staring at white on black. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, contact me. If you'll be seeing some Blackboard announcements from me in the next 24 hours on this ceremonial speech, just running everything down for you. Okay? Stay safe, stay well, and again, reach out to me and contact me, and we will see you soon.